Welcome back to another episode of the Draw Control Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Sophomore on the Jacksonville women's lacrosse team, Allyx Berry. Last season, Allyx made the ASUN All-Freshman Team. She played in 18 games and had 14 goals and 1 assist. Before college, Allyx made it on the All-State second team twice, was the team captain, and was invited to the Georgia DiVarsity Lacrosse All-Star Game and made it to the Final Four in the state playoffs. I'm super excited to have her on the podcast today. So, Allyx, welcome to the Draw Control Pod. And how is everything going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. I actually just got home from the facility. We're off today. So it was a perfect day to do this.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you as well. I guess the first question I want to ask you, Allyx, was how was your summer the past few months, and did you do anything interesting, whether it was on or off the field?
My summer was actually super laid back this year. Normally my family travels and we're on the go, but I actually spent most of my time at home and even coming back down to Jax a few times. I'm only like 5 hours away, so it's pretty close. Something interesting, my sister recently moved to LA, so we drove cross country and like moved her out there from Georgia. So lots of long car rides, but definitely a cool experience.
That's awesome. I assume there was a lot. I feel like part of the drive is probably super boring because I bet you just saw Greenlands and
It's literally just desert. Like
yeah.
there's like sometimes it's nice on the East Coast, but once you like hit Texas and that over, it's just straight desert. And you gotta just watch a lot of movies and keep yourself occupied.
I've never been to Los Angeles before. What's that city like?
Crazy. Like totally wild. There's something going on all the time. It's like sensory overload. But that's like totally my sister's vibe. I'm the complete opposite. I like quiet back roads to myself, and she just wants to be in all the action. But yeah, LA's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I would personally want to live in Los Angeles. I feel like New York is probably a little bit more my thing just because East
Yeah.
Coast it's much more fast paced. Where on the West
Mhm.
Coast they're a little bit more laid back, which would make me crazy since I'm a very patient person.
No, yeah, I totally see that.
Now, obviously, were there some things that you worked on this summer to sort of get ready for fall ball in the upcoming season?
So conditioning wise, I focused a lot on my speed work and endurance. Obviously, as most people realize, at the collegiate level, like the pace is a lot faster. And so I noticed that that was something I definitely wanted to like improve on. Skill wise, I really dialed in on my footwork, like offensively on my like dodging, and then on the defensive side with like staying low and using like my feet a lot more for body control. Those are the two things like my coaches asked of me to come back with. So I think I definitely worked on those a lot.
Now, I want to sort of start off this podcast talking about the beginning of your lacrosse career and sort of working all the way up to where you are today. So, from the research I did on yourself, it says that you're from Milton, Georgia. Talk about growing up there. How'd you start playing lacrosse? Because I would assume that Georgia isn't really a hotbed for lacrosse, but you never know because I feel like I'm seeing a lot more players from Georgia playing college lacrosse.
Yeah, so I moved to Milton when I was about 7 or 8. I'm originally actually from Las Vegas, so West Coast. I tried tennis when I first got there and I actually loved it. But around like fourth grade, all the girls in my class were like talking about going to lacrosse practice after school. And I was like, what is that? I had no idea what it was. So I went home, I told my parents, and my mom signed me up for like a beginner's camp. And then obviously we went to like the play it again sports, got me like the used cleats, the stick, the goggles. Um, Tried it out. It was really interesting. I wasn't great at all, but I actually really enjoyed it. So I think that's where I started. And obviously lacrosse isn't a hotbed in Georgia. However, like as I've gotten older, like the club teams have gotten really big there. And they start the girls really young. So like everyone had already been playing lacrosse since they were like 4. And I was like here in fifth grade where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm starting late pretty much for that. But I think I did just fine, and I guess the rest is history.
Now, growing up, who are some of your favorite lacrosse players and teams that you like to watch?
My fan favorite definitely was Marie McCool, and at the time she played for UNC, so I became like a huge UNC fan. Like that's where I wanted to go. A big part of Marie's game that I really liked was like how fast she pushed transition, and then obviously she would just score a goal off of it. And so I think because of how like her dodges were really just speed based, it really set her apart. And so I was like, I want to be Marie McCool. But yeah, definitely a super fun player to watch.
Now, before college, you played for your high school at Cambridge High. Talk about your high school lacrosse days, what you took away from it, and what's like your favorite memory from those days when you look back on it today.
I had a lot of growing moments in high school. I feel like looking back, my junior year is like when I really started to understand how important like extra work is and doing more that you're asked of. Like that's what's gonna set you apart. Especially like if you want to play at the next level. That being said, I had a great senior year. I was learning new perspectives and seeing the game differently. I had a new coach, so that really helped. And it definitely helped me adapt to the college level. And I think favorite memory would have to be senior night. We were playing a really good team that it's either normally a close game or like we've lost to in the past. I was coming off an injury and I ended up having 5 goals and 3 assists. And then we also won. So my whole family was there. It made it really special. So definitely that night for sure being my favorite memory.
And you also play club lacrosse for Limitless Elite. How did your club lacrosse experience sort of help prepare you for college with Jacksonville?
Limitless helped me tremendously. I actually commuted. They're out of Tampa, and so I commuted to Tampa to play for them and like attend practices. It was during COVID, so I like did my school online, and it was the first time I was being coached more on IQ than skill development. Obviously, I got better at lacrosse, but I was being taught more how to think about the game and like the logistics behind it. I think a massive part of playing in college is IQ and like being able to understand what's being asked of you and just understanding the game itself. And I think that Limitless definitely helped me with that.
So let's talk about your recruitment process now with Jacksonville. What was that like for yourself, and what made you want to go there versus other schools you might have looked at?
A big part of choosing JU was because they weren't really interested, like obviously only on my play at the time or like what I'm gonna look like in 4 years. They really showed desire in the in-between moments. They expressed that they wanted to be able to coach me and teach me things and really just hone in on like making me a better player. And so I think that was one of the things that stood out to me. And then also talking to the girls on the team, they really spoke genuinely and they weren't really afraid to tell me the things that like weren't so good. And I feel like when you go on these visits, it's all like, oh, this is amazing. We have no flaws. Like everything's perfect. But it's like, I don't think any school is perfect. And so it's like, I kind of want to hear what don't you like? What may not be like the best? And I think the girls at Jacksonville were just super open and honest about what they thought. And it wasn't even really lacrosse related. It was like about the campus food or like something like that. But they were just very upfront about everything, which definitely made it easier for me to like push towards that way and like pick them.
Now, what was like the biggest adjustment you had to make to college lacrosse once you arrived on campus?
IQ, 100%. I think I came in fully prepared, like fundamentally and like with my 6 skills and obviously like athletic ability, but I think I really struggled with the understanding aspect. Coming in, you have to learn a ton. You have to learn new terms, new lingo, playbook, actually how the game is supposed to be played, like compared to high school ball. And so it was difficult to piece together all of those things at once while also like actually physically playing the game. It took me like all of fall to like really comprehend what was being asked of me, but when we got back in the spring, I think like a switch flipped and I finally was like, okay, like I understand it. Like I know how to play lacrosse again. But yeah, definitely that IQ is my biggest adjustment.
Now, you play in the ASUN conference, so what's it like being a part of that conference and just the competition you face each game?
I think playing in the ASUN's great. We have a really good relationship with the teams we play, and obviously for consecutive years we had won the ASUN. But over the past few years, the competition that other teams are bringing in is like getting a lot better, and so it's being a lot more competitive. I think that's great though because like it challenges us as a team and it also brings more like notice to our conference. Obviously, we're not a big conference and like not a big name like ACC, but I think the better our teams get in our conference, the more recognition we'll get.
Now, obviously, being a student athlete, you have to do classes. I think some people sometimes forget about that. So, how have you learned to balance academics and lacrosse at such a high level?
I think it all comes down to putting in the like intent to learn in the classroom. I know that sounds silly, but actually sitting there and like really trying to understand what's being taught to you. I think if I do that and I pay attention, I have like less of a hard time trying to figure out how to do homework, how to study for quizzes and tests, what to study. I think when we're in 20 hours in the fall and the spring, if I'm really staying on top of like my attention in the classroom, I do just fine when we have work that's due outside or exams. And obviously, if I'm on top of those, it makes lacrosse and all of my extracurriculars like a lot more stress-free.
Now, let's talk about your performance this past year. So, talk about your freshman season and what you took away from your team's performance from your perspective.
Like you said in the beginning, statistically, I think I did pretty well this season as a freshman. I played in all 16 games and I think I made a pretty good impact on the field. So I'm happy with my performance. And then team performance, I learned a lot from our upperclassmen and our fifth years we had on our team. We had a pretty tough schedule this past year, but I also wouldn't have it any other way. I think it's really good to play tough teams and learn from them. So we learned a lot about growth and obviously what areas we need to push in, especially for this year.
Yeah, what was like your favorite memory from last season, looking back on it now?
I have a lot, but I think the first one that comes to mind would be my first collegiate hat trick. It was a good game for me, but also like a really great conference win for our team. And I feel like we all played together that game and it was just super like happy vibes. My family from California was in town, so they got to watch, so that just made it extra special.
And individually, obviously, you talked about some of the success that you had as an individual. So, what would you say has been sort of the biggest improvement you've made to your game since the beginning of your freshman year, I guess, until to now?
hmm Biggest improvement would be like the IQ aspect and attention to detail. At Jacksonville, we really hone in on the little things and the little details, and how you do one thing is how you do all. And so I think really understanding how impactful those are, like, and how impactful they are on the bigger moments, especially in games, has been my biggest improvement.
Now, looking back, looking ahead to next season, what would you say is your team's goals and expectations?
Our biggest goal is to win the ASUN and then obviously going to the NCAs. So expectations are set high for us to reach that goal. And to start like to list expectations, it starts with like attitude, mindset, and work ethic. I think if we can achieve like those three things, like without a doubt, I know that like we're definitely gonna be able to do big things.
So let's transition now to a segment I like to call the non-lacrosse segment, where I ask you some non-lacrosse questions to get to know you a little bit more off the field. I'll also give you some of my answers as well to make this segment more interesting. So first one is, if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
So probably Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl. I'm a really big Gossip Girl fan, but in real life, her name is Leighton Meester. So I think that if I had a character to play me, it would definitely be her.
Mm-hmm. That's a good answer. I haven't seen too much of Gossip Girl. I do from the clips I've seen, it's pretty good, especially in the first episode. They played a song from one of my favorite bands, Angels and Airwaves.
hmm
I also know that she's married to Adam Brody, who's in a good show called The OC. I don't know if you've seen that before or
I
not.
haven't, but
It's pretty good. It's basically another version of Gossip Girl, just it takes place on the West Coast, not
okay.
in New York.
Yeah.
Um, I would say an actor I would like to play myself is probably like Tom Holland. I'm a big fan of the Spider-Man movies, and there's not a lot of actors that look like me, so I'd probably say he would be pretty cool to play me since I can't really find anyone that looks like me, so I would go with him.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a good pick.
Now, if you could play a game with any professional sports team in the world, who would you pick?
Um, I'm a big basketball fan, and so I definitely picked this year's Team USA for men's basketball. I think there's so many like dominant and like great players on that roster, and also not even like the players themselves, like their coaching staff. Like I think if I wanted to be coached by anyone, it would be that coaching staff. So definitely Team USA for sure.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I would say for me, the Bruins, big hockey fan, and they're my favorite team, so I would go with them.
Cool.
Now, I think you have the best style on your team, but besides yourself, who would you say has the best off the field style on the Jacksonville women's lacrosse team?
On our team, shout out to number 45 defender Brooke DiMaggio. She's always coming in with like a new set, new fit, new shoes, always has really cool jewelry on. So definitely Brooke.
Now, what's been the most interesting thing you've read or seen this week?
I saw that Alex Morgan retired from professional soccer. I think that's crazy because she's also like a once in a lifetime player. And so it's kind of like sad to see her go. She also has my name and number, so she's always been one of my favorites. But that was actually crazy when I read that.
Is that why you wear number 13?
Not exactly why I wear 13. 13 is just a lucky number in my family. But it is cool that she happens to be like one of the greatest ever. And her name is Alex and she wears 13.
That's pretty cool. That's crazy because I know a lot of people think that number is unlucky.
See, I think the total opposite. I think it's very lucky.
Mm-hmm. I like that perspective. I would be afraid to wear that number personally. I'm a very superstitious person, so I'd probably
Yeah.
stay away from it. I'll probably pick like 14 just because it's so closer to it.
It's done me well so far, so
That's
fingers
good. I'm glad to
crossed.
hear that. I would
Mhm.
say for me, most interesting thing I saw this week was probably uh I'm trying to think of something. Probably like just NFL week one stuff. I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
interesting seeing probably just the Patriots being the Bengals. I thought that was pretty cool since
Yeah.
a lot of people, it's very, I'm a Patriots fan. It's very rare to see
Mhm.
them sort of be the underdog because for
Yeah.
the past like 20 years, they've been like the best team in the league. So it was kind of cool
Mhm.
to see them be an underdog and win a big game like that to start off the season.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, getting back to some lacrosse questions now, my first one I want to ask you was, what do you think should be done to help grow women's lacrosse from your perspective?
I think that even like with our games and then like the AU Pro League, like they've done a really good job with like broadcasting them and making them available to people like on platforms such as like ESPN Plus. So I think continuing to grow that on social media and like it be televised for people to watch would help tremendously. And then also like starting kids young, starting like programs and clinics in areas where like lacrosse may not be as predominant, or even in areas where like it is a hot spot, like really expanding it there and like starting kids like super, super young.
Now, what advice would you give to younger players who are listening to this who want to be in the position that you are in now?
I would say just fall in love with the process. It's not always going to be easy, and most of the time it's really hard, but it's also like really worth the reward in the end. So I think if you fall in love with like getting better every single day, like just 1% more, one more shot, one more ground ball, you're definitely going to see a big difference.
Well, Alex, before we end this interview, do you have any shout outs you want to give, and who should we have on the podcast next?
Shout out to my whole team. Love you guys. And on the podcast next, shout out Chandler McHale, junior midfielder number 20 at UConn. I think she'd be great to have on here.
Well, Alex, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. Obviously, I think you're a great player, but I also think you're an even better person. And I just want to let you know that. And obviously, wishing you and your team nothing but success for the upcoming season.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great.